Okay, it's right at 12 o'clock. We'll give it just a couple more minutes. I know a couple of other folks were going to join us, and then we'll get started. So let's give them 2 minutes and we'll get started. Okay, it is 12:02. I said we'd wait till 12:02 to get started. Other folks can join us as required. And as we continue to do the classes twice a week, we get less and less, which is a good thing that I've got a lot of folks already knowledgeable of what's going on, but we'll do another one next week and maybe even two, depending upon our schedules. So let's start with the following. I'll go to the page number 2. And for your benefit, this presentation, come on, go down. This presentation is on paperless pipeline in the reference section, if you'd like to pull it down. All right, let's talk about what the objectives for today are. We're going to learn about the new forms that are going to go into effect, or actually in our case with MLS, they've already been put into effect. And the final thing is there is a lot of confusion out there. I'll give you some information on what some of our agents are hearing. We as the agent need to be the steady hand on the wheel and show confidence that we can lead them through all of these changes, because the lawsuit has changed our business a great deal, but people still have to buy and sell homes, and that's what it's all about. So here was the first date, and June 24th. Now, let me tell you this. What I've learned, our board, and I'm with MetroTex, but you might be with CCAR, you might be with Greater Denton County, Henderson County. We all flow up into what we call NETRIS, North Texas. So what has happened is MetroTex in my case, and if I say MetroTex, I'm referring to all of them. MetroTex on June 24th went ahead and updated many of the forms available to us on zip forms. But when I talked to my counterpart who manages the United Houston office, HAR, which is the Houston Association of Realtors, they're not even there yet. They're still working on their forms. So the advantage for us is we've got about 7 to 8 weeks to get used to these forms and the upcoming changes. I'm going to talk about some of the other fields that are going to be changed. That is just a placeholder at this point, because now the next big date is actually Monday, July 29th. What happens on Monday? Monday in MetroTex, NETRIS, the field that is the buyer's agent commission disappears. Okay, so if you've got a listing in there now, on Monday, that BAC is no longer visible to other agents. If you put a listing in after Monday, you don't even put the information in there from a BAC perspective. That is one of the rules for the NAR law settlement, that MLS can no longer show any form of compensation. The second number is possible new field added. That will be up to each individual local board if they want to put that in there. Our board is still wavering. Do they do it? Do they not do it? But it will be up to each individual board. What happens August 17th? This is the deadline. This deadline was earlier in July, but got pushed to August 17th due to the class action lawsuit settlements when the documents went out from legal corners. But as of August 17th, all boards across this country will have to implement the changes that MLS has started to implement for us here in North Texas. There is no, well, anything's possible, but as of right now, August 17th is the deadline. So you need to start understanding what the rule changes are going to be and how to react to them, because buyers and sellers out there have been inundated with messaging from TV, radio, newspapers, magazines, the internet, talking about this lawsuit. So what are these rule changes? Here they are. There's 2 pages of them. Number 1 and number 2 on this slide deck show the same thing, just targeting different audiences. So what is that rule? I'll read number 1 for you, so follow along. Eliminate and prohibit any requirement of offers of compensation in the MLS between the listing broker or seller to buyer broker or other buyer representative. So point blank, what it's saying is the BAC disappears out of MLS on August 17th for all boards. It disappears for us in North Texas on July 29th. Rule number 2 just basically says we as the agents or subscribers or participants, as they call her, are no longer able to put that in. Okay, that's rule number 1. Number 2. Rule number 3, require the MLS to eliminate all broker compensation fields and compensation information in the MLS. It's just reiterating what number 1 and number 2 says. Now, keep this in mind. I was reading some of the facts just this morning. The NAR folks have a really good page about facts, and I read it all the time to see if there's been any updates. And I was reading today because one of the agents in the office yesterday asked me a question about, well, what can we put into MLS about concessions? And that's the word I use, concessions, instead of buyer's agent commission, okay? And so in the fact, it actually said that we can put in the notes that there are seller concessions from closing cost perspective, okay? I'm anxious to see how that plays out over the next couple of weeks and months, because I could see maybe someone saying, well, that's a hidden term or Easter egg that says, yes, we're offering a buyer's agent commission. But we'll see how that plays out. But the bottom line is we as agents and our board, MLS, can no longer state that a BAC is offered, nor how much of the BAC is going to be. So we're going to talk further about that, but that's the big number 1, 2, and 3 there. Okay. Number 4 says, in a nutshell, MLS cannot cooperate with the third party, let's say a web provider, such as, let's say, Amazon Web Services, just to throw out a name, that says we will allow Amazon Web Services to be the new MLS and all the BAC will be over there. Nope, not going to happen. Not going to happen. Okay, that is one of the settlements of the agreement of the settlements. Now, one thing that the FAQ actually does say, the FAQ you can read online, is we as agents can have MLS in our listing kind of point to our listing website. And on our listing website, on our personal, DannyElmsRealtor.com webpage, that my listings are there and I could put the BAC in my listings, but I can't do it in MLS. Okay. The other thing that the FAQ says, and I'm going to be talking to our friends here, our officers, Dan Duffy, the founder of the company, was here in this office just yesterday, and they're always popping in. It says that the brokers' websites can have the listings and potentially having the BAC in there. So I've got to follow up on that, but that'll be something our company has to decide. But those are the first 4 rules. The next page has 4 additional rules. Number 1, prohibit the use of MLS data or data feeds to directly or indirectly establish or maintain a platform of offers of compensation for multiple brokers or other buyer representatives. That's kind of what number 4 said on the prior page. They're just continuing to, let me turn this down, continuing to reiterate the rules that we have to follow. Number 2, reinforce that participants, that's us, must not, and MLS must not enable the ability to filter out or restrict the listings that are communicated based upon how much the commission is being offered. Believe it or not, this has been a rule since 2021, but they're re-emphasizing it. Okay, for whatever reason, they are just now re-emphasizing it. Number 3, require compensation disclosures to sellers and prospective sellers and buyers. When we talk about the forms, you will see what I'm referring to there. The listing agreement has always had how much the broker is getting and how much in paragraph 8 the buyer's agent was getting, at least for our listing agreements here in Texas. Maybe some other states did it differently, but that's how we did it here. When I show you the listing agreement, you're going to see, oh, I see what they've done to make it more transparent. And that's the key word. It's more transparent. Number 4, require participants, that's us, working with the buyer to enter a written agreement with the buyer prior to touring a property. That is now mandated. So you cannot open a door and show a home or do a virtual tour without a buyer's rep agreement. So I've had the question come up a couple of times. How will they know that I've showed a home and that I've got, or not have, in this case, a buyer's rep agreement? So it's a valid question. Well, the rules state each board has to, carry out these orders and these laws. So it is up to MLS, Netris in our case, and they have the right that at any time they can call us and say, and on this call, Baby Edwards is on this call, Baby, we know you showed Jose a property. Send us your buyer's rep agreement. And you better have it, and it better be signed, because MLS at any time can ask you for that. Now, what they're going to do to make sure we're in compliance, and this is what I've been told, is they will have employees of our board who will pretend to be buyers, who will spot check agents, say, hey, I'd like to see this house over at 123 Main Street. Let's go see it. And see if the agent makes them sign a buyer's rep agreement. Now, if you don't get it signed and you get caught, you could be permanently banned from using our systems, which means you're no longer an agent, basically. Or I've been told that they might say, well, first offense, we'll fine you $1,000. So if you've got a buyer rep out there that says, no, I'm not signing this, just show me the house, you push back to say, I can't show you the house because I could be fined $1,000. Okay? All right. Those are the rules. Let's talk about 2 more dates really quick. These are NAR dates, September 24th and right around Thanksgiving. If all goes as planned, the settlement will be finalized around Thanksgiving. And in case you missed it, our company United did settle our portion of the lawsuit last week. So United is now covered. We as agents have always been covered, but any brokerage that sold over $2 billion per year was not covered. So United is now covered. Next slide. Let's talk about the forms. We're going to move into the forms. Now there are 18 forms now available on Zip Forms as of June 24th that have been either modified or are brand new. Starting with the listing forms, there's 7 here, and we will talk about a couple of them. Some of them, like if you see TXR 1101, the exclusive right to sell, and TXR 1102, exclusive right to lease, it's basically the same document, just to sell or lease. So we're not going to go over both of them. We just don't have time, but we'll go over the ones that are most important. So these are the 7 listing forms that have been changed. And before I go further, I keep saying forms and I keep saying zip forms and Texas Realtors versus TREC and documents. So keep this in mind right now. TREC meets once a year because they are a government agency. So there are timelines that they have to go through. If you're thinking, oh, the 1-to-4 contract, that's a TREC document, right? And it's going to have to be modified. Well, yes, it will be, but that won't be modified till January. So the document that's dated 1-to-4 contract from November of 2022, that's still the viable 1-to-4 contract. Okay. So what I'm saying with that is, for example, the 1-to-4 contract has on page 10 at the bottom, you put the commission that the BAC says you're getting in MLS, right? It's been that way for as long as I've been doing this. Now, on Monday, that number disappears out of MLS. And think about this, on the 1-to-4 contract, that page I just described, page 10, that is not actually part of the contract. It's not. Okay. So what I'm saying is you go in front of a court of law and you try to uphold that I earn 3%. No, you don't. Okay. We've always been protected by what's in the MLS. Well, the MLS no longer protects us because it's no longer there. So don't rely on page 10 to get you paid. That's what I'm saying. Make sure you do the compensation agreement between brokers to get you paid going forward. Now, what I think will happen with the 1-to-4 is the 1-to-4 will become similar to a commercial agreement. Okay, so think about this for a second. If you ever done a commercial deal, there is basically an agreement between brokers within the commercial offer. And it says, listing agents, broker is paying buyer's agent's broker or the cooperating broker X%. It's right there. It's within the rules of the contract and it is enforceable. I think TREC is probably going to do the same thing with the 1-to-4. Get rid of page 10 and put something like that inside the 1-to-4 contract. Now think about this, since we're talking about commercial. Commercial has their own websites. What I'm saying is MLS has to comply by these rules by August 17th. CoStar, which is commercial, they don't have to comply. Totally different set of rules over there. So if you're doing both commercial and residential, just know that commercial is different. Okay. All right. Those are the forms for the listing side. Here are the 7 forms on the buying side that have been modified. Okay, we'll talk about many of these that are most important when we go through the forms. And then there are actually 4 new forms that were created specifically because of this offer of settlement. And we will talk about every one of these and how to fill them out. Some quick facts. Quick facts. The first question is, do I have to get my old listings contracts updated? It's a very valid question. You should be asking it. So let's say, for example, you have a listing out there that you got before the June 24th date, and your listing agreement or your buyer's rep agreement is on a form that was prior to June 24th. Okay, it's absolutely possible. Well, this office here and what the fact says is if that you close that deal prior to August 17th when the new rules take place, then you're fine. Okay. But if you're not going to get everything done by August 17th, you need to go back to your seller if you're on the listing side, or go back to your buyer if you're on the buying side. And at the bottom of this page, you see that TXR 2701. That's a brand new document. It's called a temporary form. It's 1 page. It's very simple. We'll go through it. That will bring your old listing agreement or your old buyer's rep agreement into compliance with the settlement, which takes place August 17th. okay? But if you're already using the new forms after June 24th, you don't have to make the 2701 document part of your package because you are in compliance. Okay. What is required by the settlement? Two big rules. Number one, from a buyer's perspective, re-emphasizing, you must have a written agreement before you tour a home, which includes virtual tours. Don't chance it. Just if your buyer will not sign a buyer's rep agreement, don't chance it. So what I've been instructing agents to do is if your buyer is pushing back and they won't sign it and you want to show them the house, put $0 in there, which you are able to do. Put $0 in there, show them the home, and if you've got a relationship with the buyer and you write a contract, then amend the buyer's rep agreement to get paid what you're going to earn, okay? That is absolutely viable. Now, what about open houses? This is actually several questions in the FAQ about when is a buyer's rep agreement required. Open houses do not require buyer rep agreements, as they always been the case. Or let's say you're a sub-agent working for the seller, you don't have to have a buyer's rep agreement. So think of it this way, if you're working for the seller, you do not have to have a buyer's rep agreement. If you're not working for the seller, you better have it. Case closed on that. Now, the question becomes up, okay, I'm doing an open house. I don't have to have it then. And I'm telling the potential buyers about my services, the open house. When do I have to have a buyer's rep agreement? Well, when you start talking to that buyer specifically about your services that you are representing them. So they say, I want you to write an offer on the house. Well, you better get a buyer's rep agreement then, plus the intermediary document, okay? What are the other requirements? The agreement, what agreement? Okay. The agreement could be the listing agreement or the buyer's rep agreement, must disclose the amount or rate the realtor will receive and how this amount will be determined. We will talk specifically about the listing agreement and the buyer's rep agreement. Number two, compensation cannot be open-ended. Now, that's a little bit of a misnomer. On the listing agreement, it can be. On the buyer's rep agreement, it cannot be. So you cannot say on your buyer's rep agreement, earn between 2 and 3% depending upon the sale price. Can't do it. Can't do it. Number three, realtor cannot receive compensation for brokerage services from any source that exceeds the agreement. So what that's saying is, let's say in my case, that buyer won't sign the buyer's rep agreement, but I want to show them the house. So I put 0 in there and I write the offer and I do all that good stuff. And the seller has agreed to pay me 2%. Well, then you better get your buyer's rep agreement amended that allows you to earn the 2%. Okay. Don't wait till the last minute to do that, but that is what I would do if the buyer refuses to sign the buyer's rep agreement until I have an offer in hand. The other time it comes into play is if you're getting a bonus on a new home. And there is a new section of the amendment of the buyer's rep agreement that talks about bonuses. So we're going to talk about that in a second. Here are some resources that might come in handy. Number two is extremely important. There's like 110 Q&As right now on that. I look at it all the time to see what they've updated because things are changing constantly. And number four, I put that in there. It's we pay for this with our fees. There is a set of lawyers sitting in Austin that will answer your questions. Now, they tell you when you call down there some caveats. They say, don't talk about specific deals, talk about in theories. And some of the lawyers are quite vague, but they are there. I call them. If y'all ask me a question, I can't answer it, and the broker's not here, I call them. They're there for us to use. All right, let's look at the forms, the actual forms. We'll start on the listing side. The most important one's on the listing side. This is 1101, the listing agreement. Okay. Remember the listing agreement's basically 10 or 11 pages. What are the basic? There are two major changes on the listing agreement due to the settlement. The major one is paragraph 5, and it's highlighted here on this screenshot. And basically the question is, I just spoke to one of our agents for about 15 minutes on how to fill this out. And there is simply the question you ask the seller to begin with. Will you offer the buyer's agent a commission? It's either yes or no. It's either yes or no, right? And if the seller says yes, you, the listing agent, have convinced me why I need to do that. It's part of the marketing cost of selling my home. If I don't do it, my house probably won't be seen by agents who are representing buyers because they don't work for free, and they'll go see a house that is working and offering a buyer's commission. So I need to be aware of that. But the seller has the right to say, I am not paying a buyer's agent commission. They've always had that right. Maybe we just didn't explain it well to them. But anyway, 5 paragraph A, paragraph 5A. This is a paragraph that says the seller is offering the cooperating broker, which is a buyer's agent's broker, a commission. So in my example, here in 5A, I have convinced the seller to offer 4% total to United. They're offering 4%. Fair enough. But there's also a paragraph A1B, and I put in there a Pontiac Firebird. And because that actually happened to me on a listing I tried to get, the seller can offer a tangible asset to you to sell their house. Now, obviously, that Pontiac Firebird can't be split between you and the buyer's agent necessarily, because that don't work. But they might say, I will pay you also to list and sell my house, that Pontiac Firebird. Now, I didn't get that listing because I wanted that listing, because I wanted that Firebird, but I didn't get it. But that is possible. Some of the other examples that we hear from brokers are someone will offer, heck, believe it or not, they say a trip to Spain. I'll give you a trip to Spain if you list my house. Okay, that's great. Not going to take the buyer's agent as the second party, but okay. So that is those blanks A and B. But look at 5A2. That's where you put how much you're offering to the cooperating broker. So in my case, I said, we'll get 4% total for United, and we're going to give of that 4%, 2% to the cooperating broker. Now, the difference is that used to be in paragraph 8 on a different page. So the settlement says, let's bring this paragraph up to where it's more identifiable and explainable to the seller. So right there, you're saying, yes, you are going to be paying the buyer's commission, 2%. That's what 5A paragraph does. Now, if you have the seller that says, nope, not going to pay, sorry, they're on their own, then you skip paragraph 5A and go to paragraph 5B. And paragraph 5B would be filled out that says how much they're going to pay United to list their house, and there is no cooperating broker fee. So they're mutually exclusive. You either fill out 5A or 5B. Okay? All right, let's go to the other big change on the listing agreement. It's paragraph 11F. 11F. Now, what this is saying is the seller does or does not allow you, their listing agent, to share with other brokers, which are agents, or buyers, that the seller will consider contributing an amount toward the buyer's expenses, such as buyer's broker's fees. So why is that important? Well, because the BAC is disappearing from the MLS on Monday. No one knows if the seller is offering concessions. How does one find out if the seller is offering concessions? Well, they can't see it on MLS, so they're probably calling you as the listing agent. And you've got to get approval from your seller that if a buyer or a buyer's agent calls you, what you can or cannot disclose to them. Hopefully a seller says, yes, I want you to sell my house, and yes, I want you to negotiate with the buyer's agent a commission, okay? So if they don't say seller does, then you're having your hands tied in a sense, but that is the seller's right. Okay. But look at the bold lettering in paragraph F at the bottom. Seller is not obligated to pay any specific amounts and has sole discretion to determine the amount seller will pay towards buyer's expenses during negotiations with the buyer. Use TXR 1412 to provide additional details regarding brokers' authorizations to share information. We'll come to that towards the end of this presentation. So what does that mean? All right, let's say we've gone to the listing and we've told the seller we should offer a buyer's commission to sell your house, and I need you to let me tell people we're offering a buyer's commission. But what we're telling to the seller, everything is negotiable. And let's say you initially offer 3%, but I can get that house sold at 2%. Okay, that's awesome. Then I will change the listing agreement to say, I'm only paying 2% to the buyer's agent commission, not 3%, or whatever you had starting in the listing agreement. It is all negotiable, or it could be down to zero. Maybe the buyer in a seller's market has agreed to pay the buyer's agent commission. Then I don't want to pay the buyer's agent commission if the buyer's paying it. So it's all negotiable. Every transaction could be a little different. You've got to just basically be fast on your feet and know what to do and what to say. Okay, but just instruct your buyer, instruct your seller in this case. The fees to pay the buyer's agent is negotiable until you start signing documents such as the compensation agreement between brokers and the agreement about brokers' fees that the seller will actually sign with the buyer. All right. Now, here is the amendment to listing. So let's say, for example, you had a situation where your seller says, I'm not going to pay the buyer's agent's commission, just not going to do it against your best advice. And their house is sitting there stale and it's not moving. You're not getting any showings. What do? Well, the seller says, you know, Mr. Agent, you were right. I should have offered a BAC. Let's try again. Well, then you need to amend your listing agreement that says, yes, they will now offer a BAC. So you've used the amendment to listing before. So it's the same document. They've just revised it to say you may have to change how much the seller is offering to the buyer agent as commission. And that's what this document does. The rest of it pretty much remains the same. Okay. Now let's move from the listing side to the buying side. This is where it gets a little bit more complicated because this is where more of the forms were modified. The first one we're going to talk about, it's called the long form now, but we've all known this as the buyer's rep agreement. It's the 5-pager, okay? This is the form, don't show a home anymore without either this form or the short form, okay? I'll come to the short form shortly. The buyer's rep agreement. I'm looking at paragraph 7A. It's on page 2 of the new buyer's rep agreement. And it says the broker's fee. So put your buyer's hat on a second. So what we're saying in paragraph 7A, how much the buyer could be responsible for to purchase the home for them. Okay, so think about that for a second. It's always been in there. It has. But how many of us have gone back to our buyers after we've closed a home for them and said, you know, you signed this at 3%, I only got 2.5%, you're on the hook for the other half. Many of us just let it go, right? But we've always been able as buyers agents to go back and collect that other 0.5%. Now look at the dark words on this paragraph, paragraph 7. At the top, broker's compensation or the sharing of compensation between brokers is not set by law nor fixed, controlled, recommended, and all this other good stuff. We had to put that in there because of the lawsuit. Okay? Fair enough on that. But look at paragraph B, the dark lettering. Source of compensation. I'll read the entire paragraph. Broker, being the buyer's broker, will seek to obtain a payment of the fees specified in paragraph 7A above, which was 2%, first from the seller, okay, then, or the landlord if it's a lease, or their agents. Now, look what it says in dark lettering. If such persons refuse or fail to pay the broker the amount specified, which is 2% or $2,500, depending upon what you're doing, client will pay broker the amount specified less any amounts broker received from such persons. Okay? So what that is, you need to explain that to your buyer because they're going to be saying, I've heard things on the radio, on the internet. How does this affect me? And they might say, I'm uncomfortable paying that 2% because I'm just not, I don't have it. I don't have my down payment hardly. I can't afford to pay your commission. Well, that's why I suggested you put 0 in there at the beginning, or maybe 0.25%. And then once you get a house under contract, you amend the buyer's rep agreement to reflect what you're actually able to earn. And it's important for your buyer to know that they could be on the hook because that may, and we cannot steer nor not show a home. We can't if an agent is told, I want to see that house. You can't do it. But if you tell your buyer up front, I've talked to the listing agent, there is no commission being paid. Our buyer's rep agreement says that you will pay me up to 2%. Do you want to see the house? Okay, we'll go see the house. Do you want to make an offer on the house? Well, I want to amend my buyer's rep agreement to say I'm going to get more than 0.25% because I'm doing more for you now. So each of us as business owners will have to decide what is best for our business going forward. Okay, it's all negotiable. Okay. Another thing is this is a brand new form. This is called the short form. So we're still on the buyer's rep agreement. Okay. I've got the 5-pager over here, and I've got a 1-pager new short form. What's the difference? Okay, huge differences, because if you are going to be working with a client, you're just starting out the search, you probably should use the long form to lock them in, okay? You've got a relationship with them, you know it's going to go the direction you want, use the long form, okay? The short form was written because you have to have some document before you open that door. This could be that document. You don't know who this person is. You just picked them up. It's a Redfin referral, for example. Hey, I want to see this house at 123 Main Street. Okay, I'll show you. I'll meet you there. Before you open that door, you put this form in front of them and say, okay, I'm going to show you this house. And you put in the market definitions, that's in paragraph 3, that you're going to open the door for 123 Main Street. You can put a specific house in there if you want, okay? And for opening that door, look at paragraph number 5, broker obligations. You can be a full service agent or you can be a showing service agent. If you're going to be a full service agent, I'd go ahead and fill out the long form, but you can be a full service agent on the short form, 5A, which means you're going to provide all the services typically that is typically offered from an agent. But in the Redfin referral example, where someone just shows up to see a house, 5 paragraph showing services. I'm pointing to it on the screen. Probably should use my mouse instead of my finger. It says paragraph 6, 7, and 8 do not apply because you as a showing agent cannot do any of these, including being an intermediary, cannot write contracts. All you're doing is opening the door and saying, hey, look at this house. This looks great. What do you want to do about it? Okay. You can do that. Now, what do you get for doing that? Look at the back of this statement, showing services. Paragraph 6, 7, and 8 do not apply. Broker will provide client with access to the properties in the market area. That's right up here. And you could have a single street address, 123 Main Street if you want. Now, period. Client will pay broker a fee of what? due upon execution of this agreement. So situation's this. I get someone who wants to see a house. Danny, I want to see this house, 123 Main Street. Meet me out there. Okay. Be prepared for me to sign the short form. And you tell them that my rules say I've got to get a short form signed. And I'm going to charge you what to open that door? Could be zero. You could charge them zero. Okay. But do you work for free? Because maybe the house is down in Richardson and you live over in Fort Worth. You got tolls and gas and wear and tear on your car. You could do it for free in hopes of picking up that client, but you don't know that client from Adam in some cases. So you say, I'm going to open this door for you. You might be working with another agent already, and I'm just opening a door. I don't do that for free. I want $50 or whatever it is. Put $50 there, and if they say, I'm not paying you, don't open the door for them. That's your choice. But again, each of us as agents, we do what's best for our business. And if I think I might get them as a client, I've looked them straight in the eye and said, hey, do you have a buyer's rep agreement with another agent? Because if you do, I'm not doing it for free. But if they look me straight in the face and say, no, I don't have an agent, I might try to win their business and do it for free. That's your call. Okay. Now, can I change from a showing agent to a full service agent? Yes, you can. It's a buyer's rep agreement amendment, and you change from showing to full service. So you show them the house, you walk in the house, they paid you $50 or nothing. And they go, Danny, I want this house, write a contract. Then I better pull out my buyer's rep agreement amendment and say, okay, I'm now your full service agent. I want you to sign my 5-pager. And boom, I'm going to write the contract and be your full service agent. That's what I would do. Now, here are some gotchas with the short form, because on the surface, it says, oh, yeah, I could deal with this, right? Okay. What we were told, and we'll see how the short form changes or if it doesn't change, is the following. The short form does not give mediation as an example or as an option. It doesn't talk about limits of liability and doesn't talk about fair housing, just to name 3. But the big one that concerns me is it doesn't talk about if E&O coverages support this document. So where am I going with that? Okay, that Redfin referral guy comes up, shows up at my doorstep. He signs this document. He pays me $50 to open the door. We go inside, and he trips on the steps, breaks his leg. Who's he gonna sue to get his medical coverage paid for? Well, this form might not be covered by E&O, so that concerns me. That concerns me a great deal. Now, we as agents can carry insurance policies on ourselves, so you can look into that. I can call Allstate, who my carrier is, and ask them. But I don't want to do that. I don't want to carry insurance because someone might trip on a curb and I might be sued. So I will probably avoid the short form at all possible costs. But we know each of our businesses are different. So if you need to use it, use it. Just be prepared for those situations that might arise. Okay, that's called the short form. It's available now in the zip forms. Right, here is, I've been talking about how do I amend it? I want to be a full service agent now, not a showing service. Well, the buyer's rep agreement can be amended, and it's right in here. Okay, so for example, where is it? There it is right here, paragraph C. Broker's obligations in paragraph 5 is changed from full service or showing services. It's actually 2, full service, okay? And you could go to showing services only if it transpired that way. But what you'll do here is modify your buyer's rep agreement a couple ways. 1, you want to become a full service agent? Okay, just showed you how to do that. 2, to convince them to sign the buyer's rep agreement, you went in a low fee, 0%, 0.25, 0.5, whatever you did to get them to sign it. But you've got them under contract and the seller's going to offer you 2%. Well, I want my full 2%. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to change how much I'm earning from 0.25 to 4.5 in this case, or whatever it is. Okay. I'd love to earn 4.5 as a buyer's agent, but you get the idea. And then let's say you've convinced them to buy a new home. You're out at Highland Homes or Normandy or whatever, not NAR, because they don't offer anything. You didn't hear me say that. You're getting a bonus. Well, your buyer's got to allow you to collect that bonus because the buyer might be saying, hey, I didn't know you were getting a bonus to buy this house. I want that bonus. The buyer has the right to request that bonus, and they have the right to allow you to accept the bonus. Or maybe y'all work a deal where you split it 50-50. What this is doing is it's making it transparent to the buyer that you are getting a bonus from Highland and you're getting the full bonus or partial of the bonus because you might say, Mr. Buyer, I get it. I'm going to give you half my bonus. So this is a document, the amendment to buyer rep agreement, that changes how much you're going to get paid at closing. So if your buyer rep agreement only says something smaller than that, and you go to title, think you're going to get the whole thing, you better bring this document with you and have the buyer sign it. Okay. What about some other documents that are on the buyer side? Okay. Everybody knows what an FSBO is, for sale by owner. And I was talking to one of our agents just Wednesday about a situation because sellers and buyers believe they are more educated now. They're saying, this is what I heard on the web. This is what I heard on TV. This is what my sister-in-law told me. This is what my lender told me, whomever, right? So I had an agent call me Wednesday, almost in tears, because she had been working with a potential seller. And our agent put the listing agreement in front of the seller to sign. And the seller ghosted our agent. Just quit returning our emails or phone calls. Finally, our agent was able to get a hold of the seller, and the seller says, I was told I don't have to pay you to list my house. It's free now. Well, that's wrong. I'm not listing your house for free because a broker gets a fee for it. So the owners have the right to list their own house, right? They can go to Zillow, put it on Zillow. They can put a sign in the front yard. What was the advice I offered that agent in that case? Because we can't keep them from listing their own home. But I said to the agent, okay, Mr. Seller, go ahead, list your home. Make sure you get a lockbox to put on your front door because I'm not giving you my lockbox. So go down to Sam's Club or wherever, get a lockbox with a little combination code on it, right? Take those phone calls from those buyers that you have no knowledge of that says, Danny, I want to see your house. Okay, here's the code 1234. Have a nice day. Let me know. And you come back from work and your house has been ransacked because you just gave someone a code to your house. There's no agents involved, right? That's one of the costs of doing businesses by not working with an agent because our super boxes tell us who went in and out of that house, right? Some of us still use lock boxes. That's fine. But at least as an agent, I know who I'm giving the code to. That's just one of the issues that could happen. All right. But let's say they agree. The person says, I'm listing my own home. Okay. You're bringing the buyer and you've talked to that owner and you've negotiated a buyer's commission. Make sure you get this document signed by the seller that says, they're paying you X commission to represent that buyer. Otherwise, you might be sitting at the closing table and the seller says, I'm not paying any buyer's commission. Well, no, you are because this document's been signed. So this is for FSBOs, for sale by owners. Okay. The next one is extremely important to make sure you get your pay as a buyer's agent. So we're still on the buyer side. So the way I see it playing out is the following. You're the listing agent and you get a call about your listing. Something like this. Hey, Danny, I see you've got the listing over at 123 Main Street. Are you offering a seller's contribution? And I say to the potential buyer's agent, you know what? I am, because my seller in paragraph 11F says I can say that I am. Well, Danny, how much are you offering? Said, well, that depends on your offer, Mr. Buyer's agent. Why don't you send me your best offer? And you put in paragraph 12, seller contributions, how much you want, because everything's negotiable, right? The option fee is negotiable. The earnest fee is negotiable. The option days are negotiable. The title company is negotiable. The home warranty is negotiable. The closing date's negotiable, right? Why couldn't the seller's contributions be negotiable? So I tell my counterpart, the buyer's agent, send me your best offer. I'm going to put it in front of my seller, and I'll see if he will agree to pay that amount because he is offering a seller's contributions. Okay. Now, if the buyer says, not going to do it, I'm not going to play that game with you, I said, okay, how much do you need? And it all depends upon if my seller tells me what I can say, but I'll play the game with the buyer's agent. And hopefully they send me an offer and I submit it to my seller and we talk about it. And I tell my seller, looks like they want 3%. You want to pay 3%, or do you want me to go back and say, strike that paragraph 12 out and take 12,000, let's say it's a $400,000 home, and they put $12,000 in there. I strike that out and I reduce it to 8,000 for 2%. And I send it back. I said, here is our counter offer, $8,000. Do you want it or not? And hopefully they say, yeah, we'll accept that. And then, because why? The MLS no longer has the BAC, right? There's no proof of what we are offering the buyer's agent. So as a smart buyer's agent, I want to make sure I'm going to get paid because the seller's just offering $8,000 in contributions to closing costs. Those closing costs could be used by the buyer to pay for their closing costs, which isn't the buyer's agent commission, right? Possibly. So I tell the buyer's agent, you send me that. I'd actually probably, as a listing agent, send the compensation agreement between brokers back with the counteroffer, offering the 2%, and have them sign it. This document has been used with leases for as long as I've been in real estate. It's just now changed to, instead of agreement between brokers, compensation agreement between brokers. So the listing and the buyer's agents now understand how much is being earned by the buyer's agent, okay? The question then comes up, you know what? What if, for example, you settled on that 2% on that offer, okay, to pay the buyer's agent 2%, and you sign the offer and they do the inspection. And the inspection comes back and the buyer says, I want X, Y, and Z to be done. Well, that's negotiable, right? So I might go back to the buyer's agent and say, you know, I was paying you 2%. I'm only going to pay you 1.5%, but we're going to do these repairs. What do you think, Mr. Buyer's agent? You want to push back on your buyer a little bit, or do you want to go forward and continue to negotiate? And it's all negotiations. I might not be as hard-headed as that, but it all depends upon my seller, what my seller instructs me to do, because my job as a listing agent is to get my seller as much money as possible for the sale of their home, right? That's what I do. On the buyer side, I put a totally different hat on and I'd be negotiating differently, but it all depends upon which side of the aisle you're on in this case and what you're going to do to help your buyer or seller. But the compensation agreement between brokers is simply that. It says broker A, listing broker, agrees to pay buyer's broker B X amount on the consummation of the transaction. And you can prove this at title and it'll hold up in a court of law. Okay. So now, this document that I'm about to change the page is signed by the brokers, correct? This wasn't signed by the buyer or the seller. Now, the seller signed the listing agreement and maybe the amendment to the listing agreement. So we've got their signatures on that, but the signature is not on here. And the buyer's signature is on the buyer's rep agreement and on perhaps the amendment to the buyer's rep agreement. And both signatures are on the 1-to-4 contract. But you sit at title and either the seller or the buyer is saying, you know, I don't remember my agent telling me anything of that about these commission numbers and who's paying it and all this other good stuff. I go to all my closings. That's just me as an agent. I'm going to go, wrong, Mr. Seller or buyer. look who signed this document here. This is a brand new document, 2406, addendum regarding broker's fees, okay? This is signed by the seller and the buyer. So to lay out the process for you and where the thinking is going, okay? So let's say, for example, back to the original example I gave you. The Redfin referral came to me and said, Danny, show me this house. I said, okay. I'm going to have you sign the long form. I'm going to show you the house. And the buyer's rep agreement said 0.25%. Okay. And they sign it, right? Then I go to negotiate with the seller and I get a 2% commission from the seller. I go back and have my buyer amend the buyer's rep agreement for 2%. So I can get the whole 2% as my commission. Okay. So the buyer's saying, okay, Danny, you're going to get the 2% from where? Because I don't want to be on the hook to pay you any of that 2%. I go back to my buyer. I said, we're going to get the seller to sign this document right here, and you're going to sign this document. And this document basically says that the seller is offering 2% for me to buy the home for them, which now matches my buyer's rep agreement, which says 2%. So I can put my buyer's mind at ease that the commission, my commission as a buyer's rep is covered. Hopefully that makes some sense. It's a lot of verbiage, but this is a document that ensures that the buyer's agent's commission will be paid and the buyer knows where it's coming from. So an example I just gave you, let's say I was only able to do 1.5% from the seller and my buyer's rep agreement says 2%. Okay. I'm entitled to that other 0.5%. Agreed? So it says right here on this document that the seller and buyer both signs that other 0.5% in this example will be paid by the buyer themselves. So they better come up with that additional monies to closing. But we know we've been on both sides. The buyers may not have that, including everything else. So we might forgive that and amend the buyer's rep agreement down to 1.5% just to close the deal. But that's what this document is for, the new form. Very important form. So another piece of advice, what you want to do is regardless of which side of the transaction you're on, talk to your listing agent. I'm sorry. Talk to the title officer. And because title companies are having to maneuver through this lawsuit just like we are and just like the mortgage companies are. The title companies will form their own rules and regulations on what their title office requires. So I would call my title officer and says, okay, what documents do you need? Do you need the listing agreement? Do you need the amendment to listing agreement? Do you need the compensation agreement between brokers? And do you need the 2406? That's on the listing side. On the buying side, do you need the buyer's rep agreement, the amendment to the buyer's rep agreement, and 2406, and compensation agreement between brokers? So possibly 4 documents on each side, maybe 3 documents on each side if you don't amend the documents, that might be required by your title officer. So I've got my favorite title officer. I'll call Bill up and I'll say, Bill, tell me what you need. I'm going to get it to you. I'm going to have it in my package, along with my 1-to-4 document, my third-party financing, my HOA, my appraisal. It's just more forms that I've got to bring to title to close. So be aware of that. Next one. This goes back to paragraph 11F on the 1101, the exclusive right to sell. Seller's authorization to disclose and advertise certain info. Okay, so remember paragraph 11F had that one X that says seller authorizes us as a listing agent to disclose that they're offering a contribution, right? And hopefully they say, yes, we can. All right. What exactly can we say? Now, this form was actually, it's a dual purpose form. If you've ever advertised one of your listings in a publication, which I have, I had a huge stretch of property down in Corsicana that I wanted to get out nationwide so that people will know, hey, I've got a lot for sale, because it was too expensive. So I paid for that advertisement. Well, I have to have authority from my seller to disclose in that ad that I'm offering a seller's contribution. So you need this document signed to say, yes, seller authorizes me to advertise in that publication that I'm offering a seller's contribution. Now, the dual purpose of this is look at paragraph A. So let's say, for example, we go as a listing agent over to the house and we're going to list it for $300,000. And at 3% commission, that's $9,000 for the buyer's agent. Okay. And we have convinced the seller to offer up to 3%, but it's not on the MLS. And the seller says to me, Danny, I will offer up to 3%, but I want that to all be in the negotiations. You are authorized to say to the buyer or the buyer's agent on the phone, if they press you, I'm offering up to $5,000 in my example, because I don't want to have to pay the whole $9,000 if I don't have to, right? So that's what that's all about. Some of them will say, yep, I'm giving you carte blanche. I'm offering 3%, it's 9,000. Give them the whole thing, 9,000. Let's just get it done, right? But as anybody's ever played poker, you don't like to give away everything up front. Okay. That's what this document does. All right. What is this document? Brand new document. Number 2701. We talked earlier about the date was June 24th, right? June 24th was when the Texas Realtor documents for Netris, in our case, became available for us to use, okay? You should be using those documents now. You have to be using them after August 17th. There is no wiggle room after August 17th. But let's just say, for example, you have a listing agreement or a buyer's rep agreement that was signed prior to June 24th, and you don't close and fund that deal by August 17th. Well, in that case, your listing agreement and your buyer's rep agreement are null and void, unless you do this one-page document here. And it might be wise, if you want to have the conversation with them now, it's a one-pager and it's pretty simple. So if you read closely what it says, amendment to representation agreement, it doesn't say buyer rep or listing agreement. It covers both sides of it. Okay, one document covers both sides. And it says, as it reads through, on or about, you put the date that you signed the buyer's rep or listing agreement. Client, either the buyer or the seller and broker, that's us, entered into a Texas Realtors rep agreement. Then it says effective second blank, whatever date you're talking to, sitting in the living room talking to them, whatever new date you're putting on there, after August 17th, it's August 17th. You can go there and you can do it today, July 26th. Okay. So it says effective July 26th, client, the buyer, the seller, and the broker amend the above referenced rep agreement, being the buyer's rep agreement or listing agreement, as follows. For all representation agreements, it's in bold letters. Broker compensation or the sharing of compensation between brokers is not set by law nor fixed, blah, blah, blah. We have to put those in all the documents now due to the settlement. So it's spelled out for them in bold lettering. Paragraph B says, for the listing agreements, client means the seller or landlord concerning the following property, and you put in the property address of your listing. Then it says for that listing agreement, what it's saying here, because remember, prior to June 24th, paragraph 8 was on a different page. And so the thought that the seller might not know that they're paying the buyer's rep agreements commission, it's kind of in a different page. Well, now it's on paragraph 5 altogether, but prior to June 24th. So what it's saying is paragraph 8A in the old agreement includes payment of compensation to the other broker working with the buyer or tenant. Client, being the seller, authorizes the broker to compensate the other broker as indicated in paragraph 8A. So all it's saying is you agreed, Mr. Seller, to pay the buyer's agent's commission. It's spelling it out. They should have, when they signed that first agreement, we should have told them that, but many just kind of sign it and don't think about it. Okay. It also says from the listing agreement, paragraph 8B is deleted because it's now paragraph 5. For buyer-tenant rep agreement, broker is prohibited from receiving compensation for brokerage services from any source that exceeds the amount stated in the rep agreement. It goes on to give a little bit more details, but it just re-emphasizes and reiterates that the buyer is responsible for any commission that the buyer's agent is eligible for that isn't able to be garnered from either the seller or landlord or the listing broker. Okay, that's what this document's saying. It was already in the other documents. It just wasn't spelled out as clearly. So this document here, the 2701, that brings your listing agreement or your buyer's rep agreement into compliance on August 17th. Okay. All right. That's a lot of forms, a lot of documents. Let's open it up for questions. So if y'all want to go off mute and ask any questions, I'll try to answer. Go ahead, Maria. If you want to take yourself off mute.
Hi, Danny. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks.
So I do have one question about the, I put it on the chat, but it was, what if the buyer tells you to only look at properties that are offering concessions or compensation for buyer's agent?
Okay.
Should I put that maybe somewhere in the special provisions that that's what the buyer wants to stay compliant?
Fair
Or
enough.
how do I handle that?
Valid question. If you're welcome to do that. Now, the buyer can choose to tell you whatever they want. And I would put that in there because it's their choice. Yes, to protect myself. I sure would. Okay. What that means, and you need to instruct your buyer this. Okay. I can't see the buyer's agent commission anymore. So I will call the listing agents of the properties you want me to investigate. And once I have confirmation that a buyer's agent commission is being offered, we'll go see it. And if they're not offering one, I will let you know that, and then we won't go see them. But the buyer has that right to tell you that, absolutely.
Okay.
So put it in special provisions.
All right. And the other one, so I have a couple of current deals already signed contract with builders. The commission has been stated on the contract, but for this compensation agreement between brokers, would it be I don't know, necessary that I go back to the builder and haven't signed that? This deal's close in December.
Got it. Okay. Couple notes on that. The builders are not beholden to the NAR lawsuit because they're not members of NAR. So think about that for just a second, okay? So they are not under the same rules that we are. So how that impacts you, okay? It's closing in December, right?
Yes.
Well, that's after the August 17th deadline. So you're going to have to get from your buyers the authority to receive the entire commission from the builder. Okay. You have to let them know that.
Okay.
So does the builder require that? That's a question to ask the builder. Okay. But I would have, because you're probably closing at the builder's title company, right?
Yes.
Yep. So I would call the builder's title company because it could be, let's say Chicago Title, just to name one, right? Chicago Title might say, we don't care it's a builder. We want proof that your buyer has authorized you to receive that entire commission because maybe they read the documents, maybe they didn't, or maybe getting a bonus. And we want proof that we, Title, will not be held accountable because we didn't explain it in a future lawsuit. So with that said, the title company will tell you that. The builder's title company will tell you that. But I would have, just to protect myself as an agent, because I would not want a potential lawsuit against me or a potential complaint. I would tell my buyer, look, Highland Homes is offering me 3%. We discussed that. We signed that form. We had these NAR lawsuit changes. Would you please sign the buyer's rep agreement that says I'm entitled to 3%? I would ask them that. And if they won't sign it, it's a different situation because you showed them the home before August 17th, you're covered, right? You went under contract before August 17th.
Yeah. So I do have a buyer rep agreement with these two clients. Should I then amend the buyer rep agreement to
Only,
the 2701?
yeah, only if, when, let me ask you this, the commission you're being paid on the new home, does it match what you put in the buyer's rep agreement?
Yes.
Then I would say you're good. Okay,
Okay.
it's when they don't match that you need to amend it.
Oh, okay. So in this case, since I do have a listed buyer's rep agreement with them that matches the commission paid by the builder, then I should be good and I should not need to do anything or still get authorized by the buyer. And how do I do that?
Yeah, ask the title company their
Mhm.
thoughts on that because each one's different. And if they do say, yes, we want to bring your buyer's rep agreement to be in compliance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then it's that one page or 2701, the one pager
Okay.
that just brings it into compliance.
Okay.
The buyer side's easier than the seller side on that one.
Okay. That's the same for both, right?
It is seller or buyer. Yes, it is.
Okay. Okay. All right. I think that answered my questions. Thank you.
Okay, Bebe, you had your hand up?
Yes. Okay. On showing the houses,
Mhm.
and it's just a showing type situation, and the potential buyer is gonna pay me $25 a house to show, and I'm gonna show three houses.
Okay,
I collect the money.
you
How
do.
do I collect the money, right? Is it gonna be, so how do they pay? Do they pay in cash? Do they pay in check? Do they pay a card? How does that happen? And how much
Mhm.
does URE get of the showing percentage? Is there a percentage or a flat fee, or how does that work?
I'm taking it all.
Huh?
I'm taking it all.
Okay.
I'm teasing you. We don't have that. We don't have that answer yet. And so I'm United. I put that question in front of the big guys upstairs that sometimes sit over there and behind that wall when they're here in town. Like I
Right.
mentioned, the founder of our company was here yesterday, matter of fact, and Rick, the president of our company, was here 2 days last week. So they're always over there.
Mhm.
And I've asked them, what are our plans on what you just asked, baby? Because it's a great question, right? Because United's in 43 states, it's taking us a little bit to investigate. We just don't have the answer, is what I'm saying, okay, for each state. So right now, and again, these rules don't come into effect till August 17th.
Mhm.
This is how I see it playing out. If it is less than X amount of dollars, we don't care. We
Okay.
don't care, right? But the guys might come back and say, no, we can't commingle funds. There's that rule. Bebe just got $75 to show 3 homes. She needs to bring in a check to the office for those $75. And let's say we charge 12%, because that's what we charge on leases, right?
Right.
And so 75, just throwing out figures. You'd
Mhm.
bring us a check for $9, which was the poor lady who sits 3 doors down from me, Bridget, who's our accountant. She doesn't have the bandwidth to do that. She just doesn't.
I know it. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm thinking the smart guys that sit on the other side of that wall will either decide to say, we don't care,
Yeah.
or they'll say, we need to hire another Bridget to manage that specific function.
And so it's basically the same thing too, is that, when people ask me to show houses, because I'm in the southern sector, I'm south of downtown. And just say Jose called me and said, hey, babe, I need you to show 4 houses to 2 clients, and they're going to give you $50 a showing. So that's $200 from 2 clients of his. And I show. So is that the same thing? Is that basically the same
Basically, yeah.
thing? Basically the same thing. Okay. Okay.
That's that. And we never collected fees on that. It was just how it was done.
Okay.
And that has been my recommendation to the guys that sit on the other side of the wall. I use that exact example, not with Jose and 4 houses, but I said, we do it all the time right now. I need you to open a door for me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that was my recommendation. We'll see eventually what they come back with.
And so I don't have to have the buyer's rep agreement. Jose has to have the buyer's rep agreement, or do I have to have one as well?
Open that door because you are actually working for the buyer. You do. So that's where you show up with the short form
The short form. Okay.
and you put $0 in there because Jose's paying you the $50 or the $200 to show those homes. And you put the 4 home addresses, or you could be more, you could say the agreement's only for today,
Mhm.
and you put Dallas County or whatever. And you're done.
Okay.
And you just hope they don't trip on something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Mm. Oh,
Anything else, fellas and ladies?
I'll have
Okay.
more questions as
Go
I
ahead.
get to what I'm doing. I mean, as you know,
Mhm.
it's not getting in there right now. So as I get to this, then I'll have more questions. I have a couple of listings now that supposed to close before, I'm praying before August
Got it. Oop.
the 17th. Yeah.
As long as you're closed and funded before August 17th, the rules are not in place yet. Okay. And again, that depends. Let's say you're talking to one of your agent friends who happens to be, I'll pick on my friend's Ebby Halliday right over here. Ebby may have already told their agents, we don't care about August 17th. These are the rules for Ebby Halliday right now.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Our rules are what comes in this office. The rules don't take place until August 17th, but we should be using the June 24th documents now.
Mhm.
And we'll work with title companies to figure out how we get through each closing prior to the August 17th. But after August 17th, we are mandated to use the new forms. We
Okay.
are. We
Okay.
are. Jose, you're at the top of the screen now, so I guess you're first.
Can you share what we talked, I'm sorry, what you mentioned last week about the showing service? What was the name of that company?
Darn. I haven't thought about it in a week. I can't remember their name. I'm sorry.
Show something, right?
Yeah, what he's referring to is what we learned from one of our agents, might have been even 2 weeks ago. There is a company out there that is offering showing services. It's their business model. And I think there is, I was reading about something called KW Go, and you know whose brokerage that is. They're kind of doing that kind of same service where they will agree. So how it's supposed to work with the one Jose mentioned first. Okay. Somewhere on the web, there is an advertisement that says, we will show you homes. Okay. All we do is show homes. We're a showing service. And they will show up at a house, show the house, actually before the buyer sees the house, have them sign the buyer's rep agreement, and they will show the house. And that's all they do. And they're going to make their monies as showing services. Now, what they'll probably do, which is a smart company will do this, they will have full service agents also on staff, kind of like what Redfin does, where they have their referral program and they have the Redfin agents that I'm showing Jose a house as a showing service. And Jose says, I really like this house. Can you help me with it? I can't, but my buddy can. Here's his card. I'm going to call him right now to have him contact you. I see how that's going to work for them. But Jose, I just cannot remember the name of the service right now. I'm sorry.
The reason I brought it up is you were going to look into how to handle the payment on that.
Well, like I said, I've asked the guys that sit, the smart guys, the owners of our company.
Yeah.
I keep pointing right back here because they sit right back over there when they're in town. And I've given them my recommendation. We just don't have an answer yet.
Can you remind, I'm sorry, can you remind me or bring me up to date on how the payment was going to be made on that showing service? Do you remember?
Who
Well,
paid
I
for it?
believe it was paid by credit card or Zelle or that Square, or it was done, it was done between, most likely Zelle, between the potential buyer and that showing company. Because they're a corporation.
Okay. Thank you.
But Maria, your hand's up.
Yes, so quick question again. So I have a cash transaction right now. As of right now, of course, it shows that the seller is offering 3%, but that's going to
Okay.
disappear by Monday. The closing is supposed to be before August 7,
Okay.
or it's around that day. So would it be wise for me to get the compensation agreement between brokers just in case, since the compensation is going to disappear?
It is wise. Yes, it is wise. Now, I will tell you this, what the FAQ says on the NAR website, that if it was in the MLS and you've got the agreement already done, like being the 1-to-4 agreement or whatever offer that has that in there, you should be covered. But when I say should be, you never know, because I say you never know what the person sitting in mediation will say. You never know how it's going to go. So the more proof I have, the better. So if it was me, I would do the compensation agreement between brokers. I would.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Wow.
Okay, any more hands?
Yeah.
Okay, just for your benefit, Miss Carol, our new broker, will be here all next week, starting Monday. And she's actually bringing Rick, our president, with him. And they should be here for most of the week. So if y'all happen to stop by the office, and I'm trying to do like a meet and greet with Carol again this coming Wednesday. So around the lunch hour. So we'll publish that in the Zoom, and I'm sorry, not Zoom, Facebook, and in the Marvelous Monday. And but again, if you happen to be able to stop by the office to meet Carol, she will be here all next week. Okay. So with that, I wish all of y'all a great weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Oh,
Hi, Danny.
hi, Casey. What's up?
I'm sorry, I wasn't able to get back to the house in time to start this
Okay.
12. So I was able to chime in on the last 30, 40 minutes of it. And I'm sure the answer is going to be yes, but will there be a link so I can watch the first half of this?
There will be. For your benefit, I have to wait for the cloud to catch up and give me the link. But I posted last Sunday night, part 1 and part 2, where I'm just going through the slides, and you're welcome to
Danny, you
watch
still
that.
there?
Yeah. So what I'm saying, Casey, is go to YouTube and just type Danny space Elms. And I've got 10 videos uploaded there, including part 1 and part 2. And once this format becomes, what's the word, downloadable, I'm going to put the link up on the same page, just Danny Elms.
All right. Thanks for being awesome.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that.
No problem. Y'all have a great
Okay.
day.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right.